Hello and welcome back to the Five Factors podcast. I am Tal Prince, happy to have you with us, and I am here as always is the case, with everyone's favorite truth teller, Matt Adair. Matt, how are you?
It's better than being a soothsayer, I guess. So I'll take truth teller.
For a
Yeah,
thousand, Alex?
I will. I'm doing well, Tal. I'm enjoying spring. I'm enjoying, a couple days after St. Patrick's Day. It's almost baseball season. I'm in a good mood.
Baseball season. Quickly approaching, and this is a really good thing. I'm looking forward to baseball season. And by the way, you and I need to make sure we hit Atlanta for a Braves Giants game. It's been a minute since we've done that.
That sounds great. They opened their new stadium last year. I did not go because where they positioned it, I kind of protested and didn't go to a single game in 2017 because of where they located the stadium. It's not easy to get there from Athens, dealing with traffic, but my embargo is lifted, and so I,
Nice.
I will go to SunTrust Park and enjoy a Braves Giants game with you.
I mean, we could do the opposite, and we could go to AT&T Park, and that would be just as delightful. Actually, better.
That's fine.
But yeah, come on.
That sounds great.
I'd be happy to go to AT&T Park. So today we're going to be talking about something very near and dear to my heart, and hopefully it will be to yours. And we're going to be talking about the difference between sympathy and empathy. This is a big deal in our world, and particularly a big deal for pastors, as I watch them lean to the wrong side of this more often than not. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But it is a confusing thing. But let's start with Matt. Why are we talking about this at Five Factors? Where does this fit into our framework?
Yeah, again, if you're new to the Five Factors framework, if this is an episode, one of your first episodes, maybe listening to us, hi, we have put together a framework for leadership to help you thrive as a leader. Like, we believe and we're convinced that if you want to lead at the highest level for the longest time, then you have to invest in your own personal health. And we believe that's a holistic approach to health, not just physical, but it also includes things like your relational health, your spiritual health, your vocational health, and your mental health. And so what we're talking about today is the importance of resilience and the importance of emotional intelligence. And there are really two parts of emotional intelligence. One part of emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and articulate your own feelings. But then there's the other part of it, and this is really what we're talking about today, which is not just understanding your own feelings, but the ability to be able to understand and articulate somebody else's feelings. And so when we talk about emotional intelligence and kind of reading the room and understanding what's going on with other people, Tal, are we talking about sympathy or empathy?
Wait, run that by me again. Exactly what you mean?
So when we're talking about trying to understand somebody else, we say, look, I need to be emotionally intelligent. I want to grow in this. And I am looking at somebody else and I'm trying to understand their feelings. I want to be able to articulate what they're feeling in those moments where I'm trying to sit across the table from somebody and help them, serve them, lead them, love them. Am I going for sympathy or empathy here?
You're going for empathy when you're doing that, Matt.
First off, okay, what's the difference between the two?
Okay, so you're going to often hear people talk about empathy is more being able to put yourself in someone's shoes. You're going to hear it kind of defined like that, and some people suffer under the delusion that I can only be empathetic if I've had that experience. That I can't really empathize if I'm not, similar. And I get that a lot with, people who have been through addiction. A lot of people will think, well, I can't empathize with an addict because I've never had an addiction. That's false. Yeah, you have. But talk with me. I'll find it.
It's an episode down the road.
Yeah, I'll find it. So, but they think, well, I haven't shared that experience, so I can't empathize. I can only sympathize with that person. That's absolutely false. Sympathy, though, is I feel for you. I feel for you. And then empathy is I feel with you. Those are very, very different things. Sympathy, in my view, sympathy just kind of exacerbates and grows shame. But empathy reduces shame. Empathy is the antidote to shame. And for all of you that are listening that are ministers, pastors, whether you're the lead guy, whether you are, the just someone else on staff, another person on the staff, whether you're the shepherding or the admin or whatever, people that you deal with on a daily basis are walking around with a big pool of shame. And empathy is the antidote to that. So we really want to be thriving in an empathetic environment and teaching that and running that way so that we have the antidote to shame always there. Antidote cannot survive. I mean, shame cannot survive empathy. It can't.
Okay, I want to dig into that. Why not?
Because if we're doing empathy correctly, and so here we go. Therese Wiseman is she's an RN, but she's done a lot of work on empathy, and so this is what she says. These are the four key attributes of empathy. One is perspective taking. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that I'm trying to see it through. It doesn't mean that I'm just trying to see it through your lens. Okay. It really comes down to I need to validate your lens as every bit as real and valid as mine. So your perspective has to be every bit as real and valid as mine, which is a hard place for a lot of us.
Right.
To get to, because there's a lot of perspectives out there that we think are nuts, but you can't empathize if you shut out the possibility that perspective is real for that person. So to be able to give credit to that perspective is every bit as real and valid as yours. It is part of it. So that's the start. The second thing, so it's perspective taking. Number two is staying out of judgment, which is very difficult. Very, very difficult, particularly when you've got someone in front of you and you just want this problem to be solved and go away really fast. It's really hard not to just judge really quickly and move on. So we have to stay out of judgment. So one, perspective taking. Two, stay out of judgment. Three is recognizing the emotion. Not just the emotion that's being shown to me, but what's my emotion in this moment. So I'm always gauging what my emotional response is to anything going on when someone's talking to me, but I'm also trying to imagine what their emotions are. In that space. And I'm going to ask questions about that to see if I'm right, because you know what? The Trinity does not become a quartet when any of us die. So let's ask questions. It's going to be okay. Well, geez, what did that feel like for you? What emotions did you experience? And that's why we've taught you the feelings wheel and all of these things. So recognize the emotions that are currently present and then communicate your own emotion, in the situation. So empathy is a practice. It's not a default response. We just don't work that way. This takes effort. This is there. Sympathy, completely different. Sympathy is just kind of like, oh, yeah, well, that sucks. And off we go. I feel bad for you, but I'm not going to get in the hole with you. And so because sympathy is just kind of this distant place, when someone's feeling a lot of shame and you've got them at arm's length and are staying pretty distant from them, it only exacerbates that shame, because you're not willing to come down in the pit with them, and feel with them. You don't have to fix it. Empathy is not about fixing it. In fact, it's better if you don't try and fix it. It's better if you just feel. There's really kind of four stages of feeling for somebody. There's pity, then sympathy, then empathy, then compassion. Compassion is I want to fix it for you. I want that to be better for you, and ultimately, because that's better for both of us. It comes from a deeper belief system, that we have, and as Christians, compassion is a major driver for us, or at least it's supposed to be. All too often, I see in a lot of churches it really not. But those churches tend to be very sympathetic churches, but they're not empathetic community.
Yeah, and the reason we're talking about this is because both of us believe strongly that church leaders aren't very good at this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of church leaders think they are. And so that's why I hope you're paying attention to those kind of 4 elements of empathy. And if you'll keep listening, we're going to give you, we're basically going to give them to you and tell you how you can get those later on in the episode. But here's something that I feel like I see with church leaders. 2 kind of church leaders that think they're good at empathy. One is the nice guy. And the person who, feels like, well, they're just always nice to people and believe that that's being empathetic. And so there's kind of they just think they're empathetic just broadly because they're nice to everybody. The second kind of leader is the kind of leader that knows that they're not supposed to fix somebody, but they struggle with the awkwardness of somebody being in pain. And so they try to help. If you're on the YouTube channel, you can see me air quoting help. By basically going, well, at least it's not worse. Like there's some element of like, here you're dealing with this, and then you just basically add to it, trying to be helpful again by saying, well, at least that this isn't going on in your life. There's always somebody who's suffering more than you are, and trying to be helpful there. So those are 2 things that I'm seeing that a lot of church leaders do, which is why this is so important for us to really kind of dive into. So if somebody's going, okay, now I'm a little scared because I thought I was empathetic, and then I hear you talking, and you just said that most church leaders aren't empathetic, so am I or not? So how do we know if we're empathetic or not?
I think it comes down to this, man. I think that if we're being sympathetic, we're more giving a response. It comes down to Job's friends. Job's friends were awesome for a few days, and then one of them opened their trap. Our responses rarely make anything better. A lot of us as ministers have seen our share of train wreck funerals, and many of us could write books on just the horrific theology that goes down around a funeral, and just kind of the awful stuff that gets done and said around a funeral. I'll never forget, when my father was dying of cancer, a local minister, a very well-known local minister, came over and looked us dead in the face and said, well, God will never give you more than you can handle. Okay, let's just leave the theological, heretical slot of that out off the table for a second.
Didn't feel like it was true at the time, did it?
What a ridiculous thing to say, right? So now, this is as true as anything I know. When people are going through a really difficult place, unless you say something really stupid, they're not going to remember what you say. But they will remember whether or not you were there with them. Empathy is connection. Sympathy is a response. Empathy is a connection. If you will get down with me and connect with me, that's different. So if you feel you're really connecting and you feel that kind of heart connection, that's empathy. If you just kind of like said something and hoped the situation would go away, you sympathize.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean,
it does. And, that this is one of those areas where I've had to work at and grow, and probably will never be super easy for me. But I totally get it. Even when we're saying, hey, most leaders struggle with this, I am among the most leaders. This was not part of the naturally gifted set of tools that God gave me as a human being. And so, I do. I empathize with the guy in that situation that says, I just want to be helpful. And I hope that y'all hear that as we're saying this. Hey, you probably aren't as good at this as you think you are. Yeah. We can also say, we also assume that you're trying to be helpful. So we're trying to help you be helpful by saying, hey, you might want to put that ratchet set up and grab another set of tools here. Because what you're building right now isn't going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. It's not actually going to be helpful to the people that you're trying to serve.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have seen, and if you haven't, just go to YouTube and put in "It's Not About the Nail." It's a great little video piece with a couple, and they're sitting on the couch, and the the woman has a nail in her forehead, but you don't see that at the very beginning of her talking. And she's like, "This feels like I had this, spike in my head, and the headache, the pain, and then so the man goes right for, well, you've got this big nail." And then she's immediately, "It's not about the nail." And he's like, "I think that it is," because, so, I mean, he's just trying to fix it by removing the nail, but he doesn't have the credibility yet. Because he hasn't connected with her over what the pain is and what that must be like and how difficult that must be. It's a really good illustration. I use it with my married couples all the time, but I break it down into, his initial response is sympathy, and that doesn't work, and it really communicates shame. Well, you're an idiot. You have a nail coming out of your forehead. There's judgment in there. There's no perspective taking. There's no communicating emotion. There's no reflecting emotion. So none of the attributes of empathy are there. It's just, I want to fix this, but it's, you have a problem, I can fix it. So now we have a power differential, right? He's above her. He'll fix it for her, and that doesn't go well.
Yeah.
And very often for a lot of us, particularly if you're a Myers-Briggs person, and I hope that you are, then, you understand the difference between thinking and feeling. And thinkers, and a lot of lead people are thinkers. When we had Jenny Catron on, I mean, that whole piece was there. She's a T, and talked about how she had to really learn empathy. She really had to learn to slow down and kind of connect at an emotional level, with people. You can go back and listen to that episode of the podcast because it's really good. That's really, really critical, that we hit those areas of connecting first. We connect with you when we're in that place, and feeling with you, not communicating emotion from some distant place that says you're in the leper colony, and I'm over here amongst the clean people, and you're over there and stay there. It's, no, I'm coming in there with you.
Yeah.
And that's how Jesus moved, worked, and ministered, and and so our model must be the same.
Yeah. For me, I know that I'm on the right track when somebody that I'm trying to help is communicating things like, "Thank you for hearing me. I feel understood. Thank you for being there for me." Unless it's really tactical, I rarely hear from somebody who is hurting, "Thanks for solving my problem." Thanks for answering my question. It may be a very small tactical thing that's uber practical, but in general, when that person's sitting across from you and their marriage is falling apart, their world seems to be crashing down on them. That's what I know that I'm going for. And again, the video, it's not about the nail, which is a great video, and the Jenny Catron episode. We'll link both of those up in the show notes.
Yeah.
And make sure that y'all can go listen to those as well. And again, that's one thing. Just quick PSA: we are trying to create this library for y'all in terms of just different episodes in different ways that you can again kind of build some of these different areas of your life and leadership. So I think for me the biggest challenge of this is working from my entire story and trying to figure out what it looks like for me as somebody who primarily operates out of a thinking position, but is not a robot and wants to feel and wants to empathize. But yeah, this has definitely been an area where I've had to grow, and probably the happiest the happiest moments for me in ministry are when people who have been around me for a while go, I can actually see that's growing, and that's a part of you that's evolving. So.
Yeah, to see that growth is fantastic. So let me ask you, as a T, what have you done? What's been the work and the steps that you've taken to develop empathy? How have you? Because that's been something that you've worked at intentionally. How have you gone about that?
Well, I think that I worked on it the way that I would work on anything, which is to leverage how God made me. So I didn't feel like I had to become somebody else. So I did use that, thinking part of me And so I watched and I learned and I listened. So I watched people like you who are very good at it intuitively, and other people, who are other pastors or other people who are in other leadership roles, or just people who naturally just are great with connecting with people. And trying to learn a little bit of the science that maybe becomes art. And so I think that's been important. So watching other people, learning, and at least learning what's behind it, whether it's the science behind it, whether it is the tactics behind it. And we're not talking about silly stuff. I mean, every time I think about that, when I think about those kind of tactics, a friend of mine had this book in his library that was printed in Texas by the Texas Baptist Convention in 1954, and it was like a basic guide to soul winning, and it included in there where to place your left hand on the arm of the person that you just shook hands with your right hand, to look them directly in the eye, to make good eye contact, a firm handshake, and to grip them where basically the shoulder and the bicep connect. Okay. So I'm not talking about that, but it has been helpful for me to break it down into understanding the why behind the what, and so I can break that down, and then just to practice. And I don't mean looking at people as guinea pigs, but knowing I'm going to try. I'm going to get up there and try, and there are times in which you got to come back, and it's probably the hardest for me because I know I'm not very good at it naturally. And it's always hard when you come back and you kind of break it down in your own mind, or you talk about it with somebody else and go, man, I just totally botched that. And because that's a human being, and that's a moment in time. That's a place when they needed somebody else, and I wasn't able to provide that. And those aren't always easy. And so I think just the resilience of going, okay, but we're going to grow in this, and try to be the best we can be. And I think probably the most important aspect is just asking God for his help. And not just being self-reliant and our own ability to grow in this, or just asking God, going, look, there are places where you need me to be your hands, your feet. You need me to be the embodiment of you in this moment. And so if you don't help, then somebody's going to be left wanting here, and they're not going to have everything they need from you in that moment where I'm the only connection they have with God right now.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really, really good.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are things for me. And I think this is what's at stake, y'all. I mean, you have real people that you want to help and serve. And look, this we're not just talking about people in your church or in your ministry. We're talking about your family. We're talking about your friends. We're talking about your spouse, your kids. Yep. And so this is really matter. But what's at stake is this person who needs to know that they're understood and that they're heard. And when that person is able to say, this person cares enough about me to listen to me and to be with me, that's what you're after. That's what's at stake is in a moment in time and space, one human being walking this earth has another human being that comes alongside of them and says, you're not alone. That's ultimately what's at stake. And that's why we think it's so important enough to have, this entire conversation. It's why we put a development plan together for you. I told you earlier that we put something together that would help you. If this is an area where you're like, man, I certainly can grow in this. And quite honestly, I don't care if you're crushing the game on this. If you think you're super empathetic, there's always room to grow. And there's always another level to go to. So we try to put this development plan together that would help you kind of take things to the next level. So Tal, talk a little bit about the benefits for somebody of actually planning out and the development of their own empathy.
Well, I think the the benefits are legion, but largely it's necessary for all of us because there are some of us that are just kind of intuitively geared to it, and we just kind of have that. But there's that can almost become I'll say insincere. And a lot of the counselors that I work with and consult with, will talk about kind of a compassion fatigue piece, which I think is also very real for ministers. And when that's in play, a lot of us get real shoddy with our empathy. It becomes almost a script. And I do it. And here's how I know, when I'm doing it, I'll be having, shall we say, a disagreement with my wife. And when she says, don't you start trying to counsel me, guess what, kids? I have now gone into scripted empathy. And let's be honest, I'm trying to manipulate with it. That's just what I'm doing. I
Right.
just want this conflict to end. I just want this discussion to go away. Whatever I'm doing, and I can flip a switch, but it's insincere. And so to come back and ground in the skill levels of what I'm trying to do, because in that situation, what have I not done? I'm not taking her perspective. I'm judging the living crap out of the situation. I'm not aware of my emotion. I'm certainly not aware of hers, and so I'm not communicating or reflecting either of those things. And so that's not good. But if I come back to this framework and understand, what the power of true empathy I'm in it with you. I'm not here to fix it for you. I'm not here to feel it for you, but I am here to feel it with you and let you know you're not alone. And they get that connection, and the true benefit of that connection is great. And if you're on the other end of that spectrum and you're a thinker, and this is just all sounds really foreign, and here's how you know, if you're on the T end of the spectrum and this is all brand new to you. You're sitting there thinking, this sounds really stupid. Or, oh, okay, we're gonna get all touchy feely now. Okay, so if any of those are your responses, guess what? You need a lot of help in this arena, and your people will thank you. And we're not even asking for commission checks on that. We're just saying, hey, it's a free gift to you. Give you this framework to help you walk through and just kind of, because a lot of us are systems people. We need a system to kind of work. And this will help get you there. And if you'll use this at home, if you'll use this on staff, if you'll use this with the people whom you are leading in ministry, you will see shame begin to dry up and real connection take place. And in that, then genuine community begins to rise and thrive, and not just in a buzzword kind of a way, but in a genuine, sincere way. And then that's the gospel. And then people are drawn to that. So, I firmly believe that if you're building a genuinely empathetic community, you're going to see growth. Whether that's numerical or not is immaterial to me, but you're going to see the people grow. You're going to see the level of community grow. And that often is very attractive to others.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do in this plan, and you can get it if you go to fivefactors.net/empathy. What you're going to get is Tal's perspective as somebody who kind of gets this intuitively. It's how he's wired. And my perspective is somebody who's had to work at it. But regardless of whether this comes easy to you or not, we're trying to help you be human and helpful. That's really what we're after here, is because this is what human beings do. We empathize with one another. And in that, we're helping each other kind of walk through this world as followers of Jesus, help each other follow Jesus. And so go to fivefactors.net/empathy and download that development plan. And I promise you're going to find something there that's going to help you just continue to grow in this particular area of life. And again, here's why it really matters. If you're wanting to look for kind of the leadership secret that we're cluing you in on, is we're really aiming for compassion here and not connection, because so often I think that we can aim at connection, and what happens is you start jamming in your story into somebody else's story. You're trying to be sympathetic. Oh, you're not alone feeling that way. Let me tell you about when I felt that way also. And you think you're taking the pressure off of them. But in a lot of ways, what you're doing is you're actually putting the spotlight on you instead of them. And it's just the wrong aim. It's just the wrong target here. So if you'll go for compassion, if that's what you're going after, then there will be that connection also, but you're actually genuinely being helpful for people. So that's what we want to kind of pass on to you, because we absolutely are convinced that you want to be helpful. You want people to feel the compassion of God through you. And so we want to help you do that. Tal, anything that you'd want to add as we wrap this up today?
Just real briefly, just to remind you, empathy reduces shame. Sympathy exacerbates shame. Empathy is a practice. It's a practice. It is something you have to continually, intentionally work at to get better at it. But what's at stake is being able to combat one of the most sinister forces that thwarts the gospel in all of our communities, and that's shame.
Yeah.
So it's really critical. This is the antidote to that. And so we're giving you a very, very powerful antidote to what is plaguing a lot of the people which you are leading and ministering, and to which you are ministering. And so this is really critical stuff. And so we want you to take advantage of it. Jump in there, shoot us questions if you have questions about it, but let's work together on it.
Yeah, if you go to the show notes, there is an opportunity and a place for you to just drop a quick note to us, a question, and we'll respond to you and do all we can to help you in that. And again, what we're trying to do here is to help you build resilience. There are going to be times when leadership is hard, and sometimes the reason leadership is hard is because you're dealing with a person who is hurting and needs your help. And quite honestly, you have very limited resources to be able to help them. Sometimes you have no resources to be able to fix their problem. And so we want to help you to not just quit when it gets hard and hide in your own cocoon. We want you to be human and to help other people. And so that's why we've created this. So again, go to fivefactors.net/empathy and download the empathy development plan that we've put together. Again, a couple of things as we wrap up here. Again, we would love for you, if you haven't already, to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. That's on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever podcasts are going out, we are there. And so this makes it really simple. Instead of you having to remember to download an episode, wherever you listen to podcasts, we'll just show up there every Monday morning, and we can have conversations like this that we have created to help you build a great church and an even better life. So also, if you have subscribed, we would love for you to also leave us a rating and review. That helps us know how we can help you, and it also helps get the word out to other people. So would appreciate you doing that. That's a very easy way for you to say thank you if anything on this episode today was helpful to you at all. We'll come back next week, and we're going to talk about the importance of rest and taking Sabbath and learning how to do that. Again, that's an area of life that a lot of us as leaders struggle with. So for Tal Prince, for myself, Matt Adair, I hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Five Factors podcast.